All right, so today we get a chance to interview Trevor McGregor. Trevor is a high-performance business coach. He runs his own shop. He actually coached underneath Tony Robbins. He's coached many high-performing entrepreneurs, certainly in the real estate sector as well as outside of the real estate sector. He is a real estate passive investor, and his full-time job, if you will, is being a high-performance coach. He actually was my high-performance coach 3 years ago, and I said it on the podcast, I'll say it again, there's no way I'd be where I was at today without him.
Or without me either.
Without Colin, of course. But a close second is Trevor McGregor. He's phenomenal. This guy is a quote machine. And look, when he says, I think he says about in the first 5 minutes, take out a pen and a paper. There's never been a more true time in a podcast to take out a pen and a paper. If you implement just 10% of what he says, you're already on a good path. So I'm not going to regurgitate all of his quotes. I will have only one thing that will continue to resonate for me, and that's going to be the law of polarity. Meaning there's always, we all know about the phrase, there's polar opposites. And it's really easy to think about white or black or good or bad. But when you're looking at, as an entrepreneur, if you're looking at real estate or if you're looking at something you're trying to accomplish, it's really easy to have saboteurs, as he says, in your head saying, this isn't going to work, or what if you lose all your money, or what if my franchise doesn't go well? And the law of polarity will say, well, what if you succeed? Like if there's something bad that could happen, that means there's something good that can happen. And I think that so many people forget that, and it's so easy to dwell on the negative that you don't really think about the positive that can come from it. And really just, you need to rely on yourself that you'll accomplish what the goods can bring you. So certainly get out a paper and pen when you listen to this.
Yeah, I agree. You have to write down, or you have to listen to it a second and third time. On that topic, criticism, especially in this day and age with social media, you make a post and you get a negative comment on it and you take it down because you think the whole world is against you, when in actuality, that person is the outlier, that person with the negative comments. You don't know how many people you are positively affecting and how much praise you are actually getting. It may not be communicated as boldly as the haters out there, but just to reinforce that, he had another quote, and this is something I could not agree with more. There is no failure. There is only feedback. Listen to that again. Say it to yourself. There is no failure. There is only feedback. This goes in relationships. This goes in investing. This goes in sports and athletics. Win, lose, whatever it is, there is always feedback. That is at the end of that. There is always some way to provide either course correction or reinforcement of good habits. So without further ado, let's jump into the podcast with Colin Schwartz
and Chris Pomerleau
and Trevor McGregor. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Keeping It Real Estate Podcast with your host, Colin Schwartz and
Chris Pomerleau.
Chris, how you doing today?
I'm fantastic. I'm really pumped for our guest today because I know him on a number of levels for a few years now. So I'm really excited for this guy.
Yeah, we have a fantastic guest today. The first time I heard this individual, Trevor McGregor, was, I believe it was 4.5 years ago at the Best Ever Conference at Joe Fairless. It was my second day out of my W-2 job. So I was on this whole new entrepreneurial journey, and I got to hear you speak there. So I certainly remember it. I've seen the path in which you had helped guide Joe and also Chris as well. So really excited to have you on. Thanks, Trevor.
Well, great to be here with you gentlemen. And yeah, time sure flies when you go back to W-2s and you go back to conferences, but blessed and grateful to be on the show.
Thank you very much. And then this will get edited out real quick, but are you seeing, is it choppy on your end, Denless? He's not coming through very smoothly. It's very choppy. I don't want it to be recorded like that.
I can't see how it's on this side. The only thing that you could see is what is on the TV there.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. We'll keep it going then. All that'll be edited out. Okay. All right. So my background with Trevor McGregor, I refer to him as Coach T. was exactly that. I had done the single family game for 4 years. I had soaked up 4 single family homes in 4 years, and I was teaching myself everything. And obviously, that wasn't the way to go. It's amazing. So I took the jump head first. I mean, you talk about the Best Real Estate Podcast and what he was able to accomplish. And the fact that he says Coach T, Trevor McGregor, helped him through all of it, that's just kind of a no-brainer. Like I said, look, I want to know who the best is, and I want to know who coached the best. And that's why I hit up Coach T. And it was no question for me. And that year was instrumental in my life and propelled us in the right direction. I cannot thank you enough. And I'm really excited for the listeners today to hear your background. And it's amazing after I heard you, after we got to know each other that entire year, the number of quotes that you would say. It's amazing. Not only had I heard them, some of them before, but I have heard them every week almost thereafter, because you've done such a good job of building your knowledge base with different thought leaders, your background with Tony Robbins and all that stuff. So without me talking anymore, I think it's time for you to talk a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and how you kind of got started?
Well, thank you very much. And again, you two are no strangers to personal growth. You're no strangers to real estate, both of you. And to go way back, I mean, right now, to really, tell you who I am and what I'm about now, I'm a high performance, peak performance, master platinum business coach and strategist who happens to be a real estate investor. And I coach some of the best of the best and the best that are in America, Canada, the UK, Italy, Singapore, New Zealand, even as far away as Australia, because I'm the guy that, people call when they want to go further faster. I'm the guy they call when they want to, get out of their head and into their heart. I'm the guy that they call when, you got to figure out a strategy that's going to help you go from where you are to where you want to be. And my background is in corporate. I mean, I got started in corporate and had a W-2 just like most people. And then I went through a pretty tough time in my life where I invested into a business, and that business didn't work out very well. And so there I was needing to figure out how I was going to make some money to pay back some failed loans. And that's when, a coach I was working with said, Trevor, have you ever thought of investing in real estate? And I said, real estate? I don't know much about real estate. And he said, well, you can use other people's money, buy a property, fix it up, either rent it out or sell it or refi it and just keep going. And that's exactly what I did. I bought one little townhouse in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from. That was a really good experience. So I bought, a condo, started to buy duplexes and fourplexes, and really started to learn what cash flow was. And you know what? As I started to build my own portfolio, I paid back all my loans, right? And then that's when other people started to come to me saying, Trevor, how are you doing this? How are you buying these properties? Can you show us what you're up to? And it was my son's Little League baseball coach. And then it was my other son's soccer coach. And I started to kind of informally coach these folks. And that's when the coaching bug bit. But it was amazing that they went out there and started to buy property. They went out there and improved their confidence. They went out there and started to, change their financial futures forever. And it was around that same time that I was working with my own Tony Robbins coach guys. And, we worked together for years and years. And he said to me one day, he said, you know what? You're so passionate about business. You're so passionate about real estate. You're so passionate about people. Tony Robbins is looking to hire business coaches to help others explode their growth. And that's when I got an invitation to go work with and for the man, the myth, the legend, Tony Robbins himself. And I spent half a decade working with and for Tony, coaching millionaires and billionaires and Fortune 500 executives and real estate investors and doctors and attorneys. And to fast forward to today, along that ride, I got to work with guys like Joe Fairless, who when I started working with Joe, he went from owning nothing other than 4 single family homes in Texas to today where he's got, roughly $2.5 billion. That's with the B in assets under management. Guys like Chris Pomerleau, right? Guys like, Dr. Vikram Raya from Viking Capital, Andrew Campbell from Wildhorn Capital, Annie Dickerson and Julie Lamb from Good Egg Investments. In fact, my client list is quite impressive, not because of me, but because of what they've done to go out there and absolutely crush it in real estate, in business, and in life. And the final thing I'll say is I'm at that point in my career where I have literally, committed my life to this, and I've done well over 30,000 coaching sessions, And that's an actual statistic. That's why you'll hear a little raspiness in my voice. But it's really my passion to help people win the game of real estate. And at the same time, I invest in different asset classes all over the world. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Take my name out of that lineup. You hear those names you mentioned, that speaks for itself. I mean, those groups, those people, the people that have been successful that you've mentored and coached, and that should speak for itself. One of the questions I have is, when you talk to these people, whether it's a Joe Fairless, whether it's the Good Egg ladies, whether it's the Wild Horn, like any of these people, what is something that you think they have in common as beginners? And I know they all started in different areas. I mean, Joe had 4 single-family homes, you said, and I don't know what Julie and Good Egg, I don't know what they had. But, like, what are some common characteristics that you see in people who first come to you?
Well, it's such a great question, Chris. And, after doing as many calls as I have and being a real estate investor myself actively and passively, it's really 5 things that I boiled it down to. So if you would like me to go through that for you and for the listener, I would urge people to grab a pen and a paper and write these 5 key principles down. And then you can come back and check in with where you're at. Because the first reason they really come to me, Chris and Colin, is number 1, what we call limiting beliefs, right? Limiting beliefs. They think it's going to be hard. They think that they might fail. They think that they might lose money. They think that they might lose investors' money, right? That they'll never be able to find a partner, or who would end up, wanting to, do business with them. And it's all a bunch of BS, because BS to guys like you and I stands for something, and we all know what it is, but it also stands for belief systems. And so where people need to get the cobwebs out of the way, I'm the guy that they call and come to when we've got to get rid of any, thing that doesn't support you in stepping into, the highest and best version of yourself as a person, as an investor, as a person that finds deals, underwrites deals, raises capital for deals, executes the asset plan. I mean, whatever it is, all of us have limiting beliefs, but we're here to remove some of those. So that's number 1. Does that resonate with you, boys?
That resonates very well. I just remember driving to work. This was in 2017. I was first going to the gym, and it was about 5:15 in the morning. I remember being in my car, and I hadn't gotten a deal yet. So this was March, and I had been enthused about real estate for a whole 75 days. And I thought to myself, I was like, Colin, you're making about 6 figures. You got your master's. You're doing better than most of the people from your hometown. You've made it. Why do you have this crazy idea? Why do you think you deserve it? I should get rid of this crazy idea. I should be thankful for my job, and I should focus on that and that solely. There's no way I'm going to get there. And then I just remember a podcast came on. I was listening to Bigger Pockets, and it was like me in the future. And he was talking about the same struggles and just said he just had to flip a switch, continue on the process. And yeah, I just remember right then, I was like, wow, those beliefs, if I continue to listen to those, I might be back in bed right now. So I 100% resonate with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely spot on, Colin. And we've all got what are called saboteurs, right? The saboteurs are little voices in your head that try to keep you safe or try to prevent you from, doing something that you could hurt, right? Like your bank account. So it's important for anyone that's listening to really, check in with those saboteurs, but also realize that we've all got access to what Chris and I know as the wise sage. And the wise sage is that wisdom that exists within all of us as well, where if all you did is listen to the saboteur, he's going to pull you down, whereas the sage is really going to lift you up. And the sage is there to find other people that have been successful in real estate. Maybe you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Maybe you read Think and Grow Rich. And you start to condition your mind and do what's called positive stacking for success. And I remember working with Chris, back in the day where that W-2 was a pretty big deal. And he was working big hours, long hours, taking care of his family, and God bless him. But I always knew that there was another level for him to get to. And we had to do a lot of belief work to move him in that direction. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest part. Is it's funny because, it's not like day 2 of our calls, or for, I would imagine, almost any coaching student you have, you're jumping into how to break down an apartment or anything. It's more like, how do we change your mindset? Because until we change that, anything you take on after that's going to be, it's going through the wrong filter, the wrong system of beliefs. All right, what's number 2? What's number 2? Again,
Yeah, it's a really powerful thing, and that's why we would start out with that one as number one, limiting beliefs. Number two, guys, is what we call a lack of a strategic plan. So when you think, why do people come to me? Well, one is to get rid of those limiting beliefs, but two is most people don't have a plan to execute, right? And I'm not just talking about what do you want. I'm talking about what do you really want? Why do you want it? Where do you want it? What does it look like in the short term? What does it look like in the long term? What does it look like for the vision that you want to have for your business and your lifestyle? And we put it all on the table, and then we reverse engineer it, get our hands around it, and then we start to create 30, 60, 90-day plans to go out there and get it. Because again, once you climb those first 30 and 60-day steps, that reveals steps, 90, 120, 365, and then some. So when I go back to Joe Fairless as an example, Joe didn't know what he was going to do. And this was way before all the books, the conferences, the podcast. In fact, maybe you don't know this story, maybe you do. But Joe came to me one day. He was teaching these little, sessions in the library in New York because he was an advertising executive making about, 35 grand when he came to me in New York. And he'd go to the library and he'd do these little, sessions with people. And I said, Joe, you're so passionate about real estate. You love helping people. Why don't you start a podcast? And you know what Joe said to me? He said, Trevor, that's a stupid idea. Nobody's going to want me to start a podcast and listen. And I said, then as your coach, I challenge you to start a podcast. And guess what? He did. And here we are, 3,000 episodes later, 3 great books, umpteen conferences. He shared the stage with Kevin O'Leary this year in Toronto. What Joe has done has been phenomenal. But it's been because we got rid of some of those limiting beliefs and a lot of them, and we created a plan for him to execute. What do you think of that?
I love it. So we were talking earlier, we had another podcast guest, and why do lottery winners, they get $50 million, they go broke right away. I've never heard of a lottery winner going to somebody that's worth the amount in which they just received and say, how do you live now? They're living as if they were broke just now with $50 million. And they end up being broke because they have no strategic plan, and it makes complete sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've heard this before, but I certainly try to live it, and I actually like the applicability of the lottery thing, because you can read all these books, but unless you have a plan to put it forward, or you can make all this money, but unless you have a plan to how to keep it, you're up a bad creek without a paddle. So. I get it. I feel.
Well said.
I get it. I feel it. This is great. So what's number 3?
Well, before we go there, let me just stack one more thing, gentlemen, because again, it doesn't matter if you're new to real estate. Doesn't matter if you're an intermediate in real estate. Doesn't matter if you're an expert in real estate. Right? We've all got another level to get to. And so if you don't really, have a big, fat, compelling reason why you want it, right? You're going to really struggle, right? Because when the why is big enough, we start to figure things out and we start to manifest things in from the universe, like meeting a great business partner, finding a great coach, getting a broker to really believe that you're going to cross the finish line with a deal. So at the end of the day, I'm a big, big, big believer that it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, and it even doesn't matter what asset class you're in. If you're doing multifamily syndication, great. You're doing self-storage, great. You're doing residential assisted living, fabulous, right? Parking lots, farmland, flipping land, it all applies. And that then takes us to number 3, which is a real close follow-up. And that's what we call a lack of systems for support, right? A lack of systems for support. We can get rid of those limiting beliefs. We can create a strategic plan. But if you don't have tools and systems and roles and responsibilities, who's doing what on the team? What partner's responsible for that? How are we leveraging technology? You're fooling yourself. So what we do then is we start to create systems that support who's the visionary, who's the integrator, who's responsible for the underwriting, who double checks the underwriting, where's, all the financial wizardry coming from. So all of that happens, but not until we get rid of limiting beliefs, create the plan, and then lean into these systems. What are your thoughts?
I have an easy story here. So I'll never forget, a lot of times, certainly towards the beginning of our talks, Trevor, which started off weekly, I'd walk the neighborhood, and I had a notepad in my hand, and I'd be taking notes, but it's just kind of how I got out of the house and got a clear mind and kind of got away from everything. And I'll never forget, this is early on in our career, and Colin had already started the meetup, and still to this day was more active than I was on social media. And I remember saying to, I don't know if I ever told you this, I remember saying to you, like, it kind of bothers me that people don't know that Colin has a 50-50 partner. It really bothers me that everyone, and this is an egotistical thing to admit, but it bothers me that they don't understand he's got a 50-50 partner. Like, the business he has built is 50% me too. It bothered me at that time, and I'll never forget when I forgot his name, and we don't have to go into it, but you named a couple big time names in the space, and you said, did you know they have a 50-50 partner? Sometimes people have to play different roles. There's an integrator, there's a systems person, there's a, what are you really after? And maybe that relates back to number 2. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this to get a bunch of likes? Or are you doing this for your family or whatever? And you really help bring that in whole. So I think that relates to number 3 about when you said who's playing which role and what are the systems going to be. I'll never forget when you said that to me, because I was like, what an egotistical thing to think. Like, I can be after a bunch of likes on Instagram, or I can be after building the best business possible. And once I can get that out of the way and really concentrate on systems, we're going to be a lot more successful. I'll never forget when you told me that.
Well, thanks, Coach T. I appreciate you. Appreciate you helping him out there. No, and it's it's funny though, because Chris is the rainmaker. That's what I call him when people ask. They're like, how's your guys' relationship? And because I am more prevalent on social media, I'm running the largest meetup group in Nebraska, so my name's out there. But without a partner like Chris and the systems that he's created for our business, I would be still with duplexes running around like a chicken with my head cut off. So
I think we should hug right now.
We can do a fist bump, man. There we go. Thanks, Coach T.
I'm on a lot of podcasts. I don't see a lot of hugging. That's more for the conferences. But yeah, you too. I mean, I give you guys credit. And of course, I see your social media. I love the podcast and everything that you guys are doing to help serve other people. But at the end of the day, you know what? You got to come back to, who's best suited for it? Like, what's the highest and best use of Colin's time? What's the highest and best use of Chris's time? What's the highest and best use of Joe Fairless or Trevor McGregor or any of the other people we've named? Because again, we've got primary roles and then we've got secondary roles. Some of them you share, some of them are completely yours. But, it's like flying an airplane. If you don't know what all the buttons and the dials and the levers do, you're not going to have necessarily a great landing. So let alone a great flight. So at the end of the day, number 1 was limiting beliefs. Number 2, strategic plan. Number 3, systems for support. Are you ready for number 4?
Yes, sir.
All right. Number 4 is a big one, and it is universal. Doesn't matter if you're in America or Canada or Australia or wherever. Doesn't matter if you're male or female, if you're young or old. Number 4 is poor time management. There, I said it. Poor time management, because I can tell you that the quality of your ability to move your empire forward will be in direct correlation to where you spend your time, right? What are you doing with your time? Are you aware of what you're doing with your time, right? Are you somebody that chases shiny objects? Are you a procrastinator? Do you write things down, right? Do you understand the rule of 168? And most people have never even heard of the rule of 168. So let me explain what it means, because the rule of 168 decrees, or that means that we all have 168 hours in a week. 24 hours a day times 7 days a week. Check my math, is 168 hours. Now, we sleep for some of those hours. We eat, we pay the bills, we play with the kids. But what are you specifically doing every single week or every single month or every single quarter? What is new? What rinses and repeats? How are you optimizing and maximizing it? And it's a whole training that I take people through where once you learn it, you can't unlearn it, because you never see time in the same way again. And you know that it's your most precious asset. So does that one make sense, guys? Number 4?
Yeah. I mean, what I've actually done in 2022 is I looked at the money we made in 2021. I divided that by 60 hours a week. That's what I'd like to get to as far as working. It's over that right now, but we have built systems. So it's down from 80, which is great. Divided that profit by 60 hours. And I said, that's my hourly rate. And if I'm spending time doing something that's not going to make me that much money, then it better be family, close friends. It better be something to better my relationships. And that has helped me. It's been tough. It's been an uphill battle because I still like to rainmake. I still like to get into the weeds sometimes. I still have that I'm a mentality where I accidentally start doing things that I shouldn't do. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, instead of actually relying on others. But that rule of 168, I know that we talked about that a few years back, and that's certainly how I now view all of my time. So that certainly resonates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And Colin, before you share whatever you want to share there, most people use excuses. They say, well, I just don't have enough time. Or I've got to work a W-2 and then do my real estate at night. Or I have to, give up my weekends with the family to do my real estate stuff. And so again, people have a story or a narrative around how they're hard done by time, where, the facts don't count when you're committed, right? The facts don't count. If you got to get up early or stay up late while you're working the W-2, that's some of the things you have to do to get what needs to be done so that you can be with your family on the weekends or whatever. So, that's one thing I also want to say is that oftentimes when high performers come to me, I can see through their comments because sometimes it's a values conflict. And a values conflict is where you feel conflicted that I want to be with, Shivani and the kids. And yet, I really know that I've got to get this done. And so we play this cat and mouse game where, if you don't define what is urgent and what's important, and you don't define, what your standard is for the most important things in your life. I mean, geez, I could do real estate 24/7. I love coaching. I love investing in apartment buildings all over the U.S., whether it's in Texas or Florida or the Carolinas or Colorado or, some self-storage we have in Key West. I could do real estate all day long. But married with 3 kids, I better know what my priorities are. Does that resonate, gentlemen?
Most certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. No. And I think something that's interesting for all the listeners, viewers, is check your phone, and on it's going to show your daily, weekly activity and where you're allotting your hours. I oftentimes hear people, I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to underwrite 1, 2, 3 deals a day. Any of these activities. I have a full-time job. I have children. I had 2 children when I had started this, full-time job, another consulting job. But man, I got dialed in to make time, and we all slip through this. We all get in the cracks. We either get on social media, we're checking emails and responding to them that maybe we don't need to, putting extra effort into it. And we're really just like trudging through the mud when if we just took a side step to the right, there's a sidewalk right there. So I couldn't agree with you more. When somebody gives the excuse of I don't have time, I say, let me look at your schedule. Let me look at your phone, because I'm guessing I can find 30 minutes to an hour for you. And you just commit that much time, you can start making big impacts. So I love that.
That's why I actually, I turned off the notifications on my phone. Right now, of course, it's on silent, but even if I'm not in the middle of a podcast or recording or whatever, the only sound I have on my phone, if it's necessary, is a ring. I have not had a sound on in my for texts probably since I was working with you, Coach T, because I was like,
wow.
Well, I mean, why?
Impressive.
I couldn't imagine looking at my phone every time that thing goes off. Like, is it really that important? If it's an emergency, they'll call. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's probably you have one thing to accomplish, dedicate your time to that. And if you have things in your life, whether it's social media or text going off, I'm just trying to give a small example of ways you can make incremental changes, like turning the sound off for social media and or text notifications. That can help you really dial down and take more control over your time.
Yeah. And one more thing to add to that, and this is kind of the difficult one, because we do have trouble turning it off, or we want to hang out with our kids, we want to hang out with our family, we want to hang out with our wife, but we need to get some work done, and being very specific with that. So my wife, Emily, I told her the other day, I'm going to get home, but I have 30 minutes of work that needs to get done. And she came in and started asking questions. I was like, honey, I appreciate it, but can this wait for 30 minutes? Because I know that if I'm answering her question, I'm going to give it 50% actual effort. The work, I'm going to give 50% effort. I'm going to be frustrated with both tasks because I can't focus on them. So just allotting that and setting those boundaries for whatever it is. Now, if work comes in and I'm playing with my kids, and I'm playing with my kids and we're in the middle of the game of life or whatever it may be, then I'm playing with my kids and the work has to wait until that game is over with.
Definitely.
It's spot on, guys. And again, there's a statistic I'll stack on what both of you said. So thank you for that. But for people that try to multitask and they're doing, 6, 8, 10 different things at once, it's really not what high performers do. High performers pick their category, right? If you're underwriting, underwrite. If you're talking to an investor, be present, right? If you're playing the game of life with your kids, be with your kids. But if you're trying to do everything at once, this is the statistic. For every time you're interrupted from doing what you're trying to focus on or do, it takes the human brain roughly 7 to 12 minutes to get back to the level of focus it had before you were interrupted. Now get your heads around that. It takes 7 to 12 minutes for you to get back to the level of focus that you had before the interruption. So shut the notifications off, shut your email off, shut your phone off, or put it on airplane mode, or whatever you need to do when you need to be specifically present, either with yourself, your spouse, your kids, your investors. And then there are other times where you have your phone on and your notifications on, but not all time is created equal. What do you think of that?
I think that's great. So I challenge everybody listening to this. It's like, no, I'm a multitasker. I can multitask everything. Okay. Say the ABCs, 26 letters in the alphabet, right?
I think.
Yeah. Say the ABCs, then count to 26. Now try to do that, but alternate letters and numbers. A1, B2. It will be infinitely longer to do that. You're not going to be able to run through A, B, C, D, E, F, G with alternating the numbers. And that's a very simple example of that multitasking is not effective.
Yeah, there's something that, shout out to David Crum, that U.S. legal group, or my previous boss, as of tomorrow. Coach T, you'll like to hear this. I'm officially done with my W-2 on December 1st of 2022. Now, I've been celebrating now for about a year and a half because I had one client for 4 months. I had 2 clients for 3 months. I just kind of helped the group get through it. But my name is unfortunately or fortunately getting scraped off the door tomorrow. So that's exciting for me. Big shout out to you, though, for all that help. But that being said, David Crum, an attorney and my old boss, was saying that what he likes to do is just time block. So, much like Owen Dashner does to working out, he says, look, from 8 to 9, I'm working out, period. Don't call me. I don't want to deal with it. I'm not going to deal with it. What he had suggested is say, look, you have a case coming up from 2 to 3. You're only working on that. Your door's shut. Your phone's off. You're working on this. And it wasn't a direction or a directive given by him. It was more like concentrate on one thing and you will knock it out in that 1 hour. If you try to do that, answer the phone, answer an email, it's going to take you, because of that 7 to 12 minute situation, it's going to take you 3 hours of what you could have accomplished in 1 hour.
So good, Chris. So good. That's what Tony Robbins calls optimization and maximization, right? It's a singular focus. Some people call it a Pomodoro technique, where you set your timer on your smartphone for 45 minutes and your head's down for 45 minutes. You don't check email. You don't get up to go to the bathroom. You don't go refill your water glass. Your head's down for 45 minutes and you get like an hour and a half of productivity out of that.
That's the 80. Is that the 80-20? Same rule?
That's Pareto's law.
Okay.
Very similar. Okay. Pomodoro is a timer. The 80-20 rule is, 20% of what you're doing is going to yield 80% of your result. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Great.
Beautiful.
Okay, I interrupted you.
So no, that's good. That takes us to the 5th and final of the 5 reasons why people come to me. And this is a unique one because I'm going to give it to you in what I call 5A, 5B, and 5C, because they're all uber important. And 5A, gentlemen, is really what I call a lack of execution, right? A lack of execution, because we can get rid of your limiting beliefs and create a plan and create systems for support and optimize your calendar and your time. But if you're not out there taking what I call intelligent and inspired action, you're fooling yourself. So again, execution is really 5A. 5B is really a lack of measuring your progress. I mean, how do you know if you're on track? What are your KPIs? What are your benchmarks? How are you really understanding if you're, on the right road or if you're off the road, right? It's like an airplane in the sky. An airplane that flies from, Nebraska to LA is off course 99% of the time until a satellite in the sky course corrects it so it can land at LAX. Well, the same thing applies in real estate and in life. So that's 5B, is having benchmarks or KPIs or something to measure against. People don't have that usually. And 5C, the final thing, is really a lack of accountability, right? A lack of accountability. If you don't have a coach, a partner, accountability buddy, somebody holding your feet to the fire, making sure you're doing what you say you're going to do, guys, we know the path of least resistance kicks in, and we find ourselves sitting on the couch watching Netflix, right? Well, a little bit of Netflix on Saturday night is cool, but a lot of Netflix is not cool, because we are here on purpose and with purpose to make impact and income through this beautiful thing called real estate. So 5A, lack of execution. 5B, lack of course correction or measuring your progress. 5C, a lack of accountability. How would you speak to that?
A question for you, and it'll be on 5A. So you are working with a lot of high-level individuals, a lot of motivated individuals, a lot of very intelligent individuals. Now, they've gone through all these 4 other items. You've kind of crushed their limiting beliefs. They've got a strategic plan together. They have some systems put together. They've time blocked. Now they've kind of figured out their time management. But I feel like I see this a lot, is the lack of execution. Why do you think that occurs in that? Why do you think that then becomes a roadblock? When somebody does have all the information, they have all the resources, and they may have a great coach that's kind of helped them along the way, but it almost feels like there's a wall right there that they don't want to step over. They don't want to utilize the door that's there because they don't have the key, so they're not going to go ask for the key, et cetera.
Well, it's such a great question, Colin, and it really boils down to the number one thing that holds anybody back, right? And that is some sort of resistance, or as we just simply call in coaching, fear, right? They've got some belief or some fear that if they do this, they could fail. Or if they do this, they could get criticized negatively. Or if they do this, they're not worthy of it. And really, those are what we call the big 3 universal modalities of fear. I'll say them again: the fear of failure, the fear of criticism, or the fear of not being worthy of success. And everybody that I've ever coached, everybody that I ever will coach, has some level of residue still in their system with something their dad told them, something their mom told them, something a school teacher told them. They're not enough, or they're not lovable, or they're awkward, or quit daydreaming, pay attention, get in line, eat your lunch here, go to recess at this time, right? And so we've all been told what to do, and we've forgotten that we're all conscious creators. We've forgotten that we're entrepreneurs at heart. In fact, if we go back just 200 years, nobody went to work for someone else. They were farmers, they were butchers, they were bakers, they were blacksmiths. They were all entrepreneurial. So when I take a look at the, tens and tens and tens of thousands of people that I've coached, or the stages I've stood on, or the podcasts, or the TV, or the radio I've been on, I really go back to the fact that those 3 things, you've got to really do some soul searching. And sometimes it's the dark night of the soul to really remember that if there's failure that's possible, or that if there's criticism, negative criticism that's possible, or if there's failure, or, somebody says you're not worthy of it, I bring in something called, and Chris will remember this, it's called the law of polarity. And the law of polarity, guys, is like the law of gravity. So what has that got to do with anything? Well, it's got everything to do with this, but you can't have the fear of failure, the fear of criticism, or the fear of unworthiness without the polar opposite also being available to you as a real estate investor. That means that if you tried something, you could be wildly successful. Or if you did something, someone could positively criticize you, and in a good way. Maybe they even want to invest alongside of you boys. Or that whole thing around, self-worth, self-wealth, and self-esteem. I'm telling you this, please put this in your notes. Abundance is your birthright. Abundance is your birthright. You've got just as much an opportunity to go out there and use any form of real estate to make impact. And when you make impact, you make income. So for anyone that's not just interested, but defiantly committed to doing what they need to do to step up their game as a real estate investor, money has to be there and available for you on the other side of that impact. So again, we call those the 3 modalities of fear. We bring in the law of polarity. We start telling the brain that there's something for us on the other side of it, just like you can't have day without night, or you can't have black without white, or you can't have the North Pole without the South Pole. polarity exists in everything, and it's available to all of us. Does that support your question?
So much so, because that's a phenomenal way to look at it. And another way I've heard that said is, and I guess I didn't apply it to the law of polarity, but that's certainly something I will continue to remember. You've refreshed my memory now, because I have all this drawn out actually in my notebook. All of a sudden we go over it. But another phrase to go over that would be, you keep asking yourself, what if I fail? What if I fail? What if I fail? Well, the obvious follow-up question is, what if you succeed? Like, what if you are successful at what you want to make happen? Why aren't you thinking about that? Now, imagine if you put all of your energy into thinking about that. And that gives me little goosebumps talking about it, because it's so real. And nobody, both of us fought this. I mean, Colin quit cold turkey. I was working full-time as an attorney and then full-time as a real estate professional, and still I was getting pushback. I'll never forget, my family the entire time was like, Chris, you're an attorney. I cannot believe you're quitting your job. What are you doing? What if real estate goes under? Do you know what happened in 2008? One time my uncle's cousin's brother's sister tried to flip a house and it didn't go well. And it's like, it was stressful to me, but maybe this is a good time for my ego came in. I was like, oh yeah, you think I'll fail? I'm going to succeed. And all I could think about was the good. Still cautious, but always thinking about, if there's bad, there's good. And I want to be successful more than I'm worried about being unsuccessful.
Yeah, I love that. Trevor,
I love it.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'll just say, Colin, that what Chris is saying is so good, so timely, especially in today's world with so many doctors that I coach, or attorneys I coach, or, like I said, the Fortune 500 executives, the franchise owners that know that there's got to be more than, life than what they live for the first 35 years. Because it's usually around the ages of about 36 to 42 that people come to me. It's kind of my sweet spot. And of course, I got people on either side of that, but it's where they go, you know what, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be another way. There's got to be a possibility for not cap my income, with a W-2, where real estate investors literally have no limits to how much they can make. But you got to be hungry. You got to be passionate. You got to check in and really define, what is your why? Because like I said earlier, when the why is big enough, your partner shows up. When the why is big enough, the coach shows up. When the why is big enough, the deal shows up. And when you get really freaking good at this stuff, you start to build pipelines of investors that continue to come to you because of your defiant commitment to play at a higher level. So again, those 5 things are all part and parcel and go hand in hand: getting rid of the limiting beliefs, the lack of a strategic plan, the lack of systems for support, the poor time management, and then 5 A, B, and C, which are the lack of execution, the lack of measuring your progress, and the lack of accountability. What do you think?
Those are phenomenal. And I think lots of this is, you alluded to this, but a lot of this is ingrained into us from a young age. When 70% is, you're on the lower end of average, meaning 7 out of 10 times, if you're correct, you're not doing that well. You're pushing yourself to the lower part of class. When in actuality in business, if you're right 1 out of 10 times and you really nail it, you've just nailed it. I mean, you're on a different level of success. Now, for our investments, we want to be a lot better than 10%, but we're looking at a lot. We're going through that iterative effort. And I remember when that fear, I started utilizing the polarity, which I did not even know existed. And Chris has heard this story 1,000 times, but it's how I switched my mindset to have the determination to become not only an investor, but something else. I had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, January 1st, 2017. I get back to my work, which happened to be my birthday a couple days later, had some things change at work. They took away some vacation time or unpaid time off, and having a second child, and also basically this brought in almost like a midlife crisis. And then I look across and I see, and it just, this moment I saw an individual, he was 30 years my senior, in a 1,000-day countdown timer sitting on his desk. And I just remember sitting there thinking that there's so much fear going through that individual that the only thing that they can think of is picturing, how do I give up 1,000 days of my life to get to the point where I don't have to be here. So instantly that stripped the fear away from me, because I said, if I go do something and it fails, there's always a seat open for me to come back to this and I can continue the countdown timer. But if I don't do that, my 20,000 days till then, or whatever it was, is just going to shrink down, and my limiting possibilities is going to continue if I don't take one of those leaps. So I just remember that being really powerful and really starting to understand that if I fail at this, it's okay. Because guess what? I can go try to fail again and fail again and fail again and succeed eventually. I got fortunate. I found Chris. I had a lot of determination. I had a very supportive wife, and I honestly just went after it, that it did succeed. But on the other side of that, I said, what's the problem with failure? Because I'll basically be back in the same position. So how is taking the sleep going to be detrimental to me?
Yeah,
No, I love it.
No,
I'm going to jump in on that.
Yeah.
It's too juicy for a high performance coach not to jump in on it. And Chris says, and Chris will allude to this over and over, I am a quote guy. Like, I know more quotes off the top of my head than probably anyone I know. But I go back to Think and Grow Rich, where Napoleon Hill wrote this great book. And in that book, he says that there is no failure, there's only feedback. And I love that quote, and I love your story, because we don't really fail. We just simply learn what didn't work. And if we go at it again, we might learn how it didn't work again and again and again. But through another law called the law of familiarity, yes, another law. And if you believe in the law of gravity and the law of cause and effect, which I bet you do, and the law of polarity, now we bring in this one, the law of familiarity, you start to see what works and what didn't work with an investor. You start to see what worked and what didn't work with a podcast editor. You start to see what worked and what didn't work with a partner, right? And you start to put the puzzle pieces together. It's where the ego, feels hard done by, or, I'm not a failure, or I choose not to own that identity. I've failed thousands of times. Tony Robbins has failed. In fact, Joe Fairless's first real estate deal, when he bought his first apartment, he went upside down $1 million. And not a lot of people know that, because Joe kept it a secret for the longest time. And now it's out in the public, where his first real estate deal did not go very well, but he cleaned it up, paid back all the investors, and now has gone on to do, epic things. But does that land with you guys, that there is no failure, there's only feedback?
Imagine if Joe would have quit after that. Most people would have quit.
Yep.
And not only for his success, but think of the thousands of people he has impacted. And when I say thousands, it's got to be thousands upon thousands of people that he has helped change their
Correct.
lives. And it's because, to your point, he chose to see what most would consider a failure, which I'm sure $1 million for your first deal, no matter what, it's going to feel like a kick into something. So kudos to him. But for the ability to realize that's the world's feedback, and that there was mistakes that were made, whether it was the underwriting, whether it was the project itself, whether it was the coordination, whether it was the debt, whether it was just the timing, whether it was bad luck and circumstances, but to realize and then to mitigate those risks as he went forward to create a $2.5 billion portfolio is really just impressive. My son just had his first wrestling tournament this last weekend, and apparently 7 years old is no longer beginning. He's 3 years behind on wrestling. He's wrestling kids that have had between 30 and 70 matches this year. And I said, you're going to learn a lot today. You may win, but when you lose, we're going to figure out the best points of it. And I was just super proud of him, because the kids nowadays, it's crazy. First match, he got teched. The second one, he almost won. He lost by a point. And, by the end of it, he was like, Dad, I can't wait to wrestle again, because if I were to wrestle that second guy, knowing what I know now, I would have won. So not viewing that as a failure, but really the world's giving you feedback on how to get better. So that is honestly my favorite thing that we've talked about so far.
Yeah. Well, I got to give you credit there too, because that's why guys like us and women too love sports, right? We don't know what the outcome is going to be, right? Two teams going at it, or two wrestlers going at it, and we get all of our 6 human needs met through it. We're certain we're going to enjoy it. We get a little bit of variety. We get a little significance being a spectator at the event. We get connection to other sports fans. and we feed our growth and our contribution in terms of, what we're all here to do. So make no bones about it. Real estate is the same thing, but it's not for the faint of heart, right? If it was that easy, everyone would quit their W-2 job and become a real estate investor. But you know what? That's why I applaud guys like you and guys like me and guys like Joe, for rolling up our sleeves and getting at it and just kind of taking sticks off the pile, trying to figure it out. But you two have done a phenomenal job. So huge props to you.
I think that basically this relates to what we've been talking about, but I have never, the two biggest things I've heard seasoned investors say is, I wish I would have started earlier and I wish I would have sold less. Now, we won't get into number two because there are different business plans on how to make money, and that's fine. But that first one, I sincerely can say at this moment, today, I have never heard, not once, a single person tell me, I wish I never would have tried to invest in real estate. Even if they were unsuccessful, I've never heard someone say, I wish I wouldn't have tried. And I've heard so many people say, I wish I would have tried earlier. So I couldn't imagine being at that desk seeing what you saw, like, if it doesn't go well, I'll try something else. But now's the time. And what if I succeed, really is the mindset to have. So that's great. Hey, I'm super...
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, again, I know we got to get it ready to wrap, but what comes up for me when we have this delicious, juicy conversation about, mindset and strategy and identity and all of that stuff. One of my favorite quotes I'd like to leave with you and the listener, and it comes from Tony Robbins' coach, Mr. Jim Rohn. So if you know Jim Rohn, he was literally instrumental in launching Tony. And he's got my favorite quote of all time because he says this, that it's not the winds that blow on you that will determine where you end up. It's the set of the sail. And I just love that. It's not the winds that blow on you that will determine where you end up as a real estate investor. It's the set of the sail. And we got a lot of wind blowing on us, guys. We got the post-pandemic wind. We got the political wind. We got the interest rate wind. We got the cap rate wind. We got the stuff going on overseas wind, right? We've got a lot of wind blowing on us. But it's not the winds that blow on you that will determine where you end up. It's the set of the sail. And who's responsible for setting your sail? You are. I'm here to help you, but ultimately we all have to take what we call extreme ownership. And no matter which way is the wind blowing, we got to change our sails to catch it and keep moving forward. What do you think of that quote?
I think it's perfect. I think, how do you add to that quote?
It's just not, what you're saying is don't blame the world. It's getting out of that poor me syndrome. It's, the world can be on fire and, I know we do have to wrap this up and we have a couple questions at the end, but I just remember during COVID, the world is just freaking out and, rightfully so. There's this pandemic going on, but I remember just talking to Chris and also I was talking to my wife. I said, there are a few times, at least that I've been alive that, and, I hate to say it, but that there's an opportunity. Everybody's in fear. The world needs leadership right now. There's landlords that want to pull back on their budgets, not repair things because they think that, they're not going to collect rent and all these terrible things. And they're already resorting to the worst idea. And instead, we incentivized our residents and provided them gift cards for groceries for paying their rent. And we were on top of our maintenance requests. And I think you can have one or two views of the world. You can have that the bad is against you or that you can be the good and provide that back to the world. So, man, there's
Beautiful.
So many good quotes here.
I wish we had one more hour and I wish I had more paper because I've been taking a lot of notes. One more portion.
You always do take great notes.
I do. I think from past life. We have one more thing to do here.
Yeah, so we got C and C's final three. So we asked you 3 different questions. These are kind of quick hitters. And one that they do change, but one that I always ask, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get some good answers out of you. But we will see. Daily habits. What are your daily or weekly habits? What's something that helps Trevor daily become Trevor, the man who has coached for over 30,000 hours and inspired so many individuals and helped so many high performers?
Well, thank you, Colin. And I guess one thing that differentiates me is I get up super early every morning. I get up at 4:44 a.m. every single day. 4:44. I'm not part of the 5 a.m. club because, that's for average people. I get up 16 minutes earlier. I get up, I go to the bathroom, I drink a glass of water with lemon for alkalinity to hydrate. Then I go do my meditation and I condition my mind for success. Then I work out for 30 minutes with, the home gym or stretch bands or free weights or a little bit of push-ups or squats or whatever. And then I am ready to rock and roll before most people are, hitting the snooze button the 7th time. So getting up early gives me what I call the competitive edge to condition my mind and my body for absolute success.
Love it.
That's great. I already know this answer, I think, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Number one, only one answer, number one book you would suggest to anybody when starting out as an entrepreneur?
Hands down, Think and Grow Rich. Hands down.
It's the answer I give every time because of you.
Yeah. Well, again, I've read it over 100 times. I have the audio in my SUV. My kids can recite passages from it. And it's not for the faint of heart because it's a hard read. I think it's an easier listening, book. It's a good audio book. But the concepts, the principles in there where business meets beliefs meets personal growth, it's hard to find anything better. You'll also hear me talk about, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, or Awaken the Giant Within. There's so many great books out there, but Think and Grow Rich is like my Bible.
It's gonna make me seem, I don't want to say the word inferior, but I have never gotten through Think and Grow Rich. I am going to get it on Audible. And Chris knows, I probably go through at least, 40 books a year at least. So Audible, wow. And I read about, not as many as I did when I started, I'm going to make excuses here, but maybe I'll read a dozen books a year and I'll listen to the left. Audible, but I'm audibling it. All right. Do you have another question? Otherwise I have one. Okay. So this is another one I like to ask. What is your BHAG? And I'll break down that acronym. What is your big, hairy, audacious goal? This goal is something that almost seems impossible, but we keep driving for. We keep striving for. If we could achieve it, we almost feel like we hit it. Oh, here we go. For our listeners, he just grabbed something.
Yeah,
love it.
The people that are
we have it. I love it.
This is Mr. Pomerleau knows what this is. Guys, this is a book that my wife, Lisa McGregor, wrote that has literally gone viral. It's a book for children. It's called A New Alphabet for Humanity. And instead of teaching kids that A is for apple and B is for boy and C is for cat and D is for dog, she got the idea to rewrite the alphabet for kids where A is for abundance and B is for bravery and C is for compassion and D is for diversity and E is for empathy. And it goes on and on and on. And we got one of the most unbelievable illustrators from the UK to do this amazing project with us. And what started out as a little, part-time project to teach our own kids, these words that I wish we would have learned early, has become a global phenomenon. In fact, my wife, Lisa, has just sold over 100,000 copies of this book worldwide and cracked $3 million in revenues, which we give a huge portion of that to charities, to schools, to Montessori's. And for every book we sell, we also plant a sapling tree. So our BHAG is to get this into more schools, more Montessori's, more, kindergartens, more daycares, more hospitals. We just donated a ton of books to the Austin's Children's Cancer Ward last month. And it's just our goal to really make sure that this book goes viral. So for anyone that's interested in finding out more, they can go to her website, which is alphabetforhumanity.com. That's alphabetforhumanity.com. Makes a great Christmas gift or birthday gift or baby shower gift, because this, my friends, is what's going to change the world.
Well, she just sold another 25 copies because we're doing a fundraiser for a toy drive for Toys for Tots. I just can't. That's amazing because children, education, me and Chris are just absolutely emphatic about how do we help this next generation. So definitely I'm going to buy 25 copies of those and provide those as we give out toys as well. So kudos to your wife. That's amazing. And kudos to you.
How about we match that for you gentlemen? For every, 25 books you buy, we'll donate 25 to the cause as well. And that's just the way we roll. Lisa and I are big believers in, what goes around comes around. And, we really borrowed this phrase from my coach, my, mentor, Tony Robbins, where he says that the secret to living is giving. So thank you.
That's great.
No, thank you. Thank you for providing that.
Thanks for coming on, Coach T. This has been phenomenal. It's been great to partially catch up. There's no doubt in my mind that I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for you. And I think that the ability for you to, off the top of your head, to just go through just these 5 steps and how it resonates so much now, even looking back to when I started. And I know it resonates for Colin as well because we all go through the same things. This is phenomenal. So appreciative of you being on the podcast, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. Keep up the amazing work. And remember, you know what? We've all got a unique opportunity to reflect back on those 5 keys. And don't make whatever the answer is, good or bad. Don't make it right or wrong. Maybe you want to scale it on a scale or rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. But numbers don't have meaning until you assign it a meaning. If you're at a 4 or a 5 in one of those areas, set a goal to get to a 6 or a 7. If you're at a 6 or a 7, set a goal to get to an 8 or tickle a 9, because this is that concept that Chris and I go way back, and even Colin, when we met, it's really about constant and never-ending improvement. So with that said, thank you for having me on. Keep up the great work, and have a great 2023.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate it.